clearance and lead-based paint clearance for an FHA buyer. Conventional VA, they don't want to help you. Obviously, they want to, re-secure the loan with an FHA buyer rather than letting it go to somebody else because they probably lost a bunch of money on the foreclosure in the first place. So the insured ones, these things are good to go as is, no repairs needed. And then there's also the insured escrow. These are going to be ones that have under $5,000 in repairs on them. They do add a 10% buffer to it, so technically the amount could be up to $5,500. But these are ones that will qualify for 203B, but do need a little bit of work. So you got to make sure that your lender understands how lender holdbacks work on FHA financing. A lot of lenders either can't do them or just don't know how to do them. So make sure you clarify with your lender up front. If you're offering on a HUD home that's an insured escrow, which it will say it on the MLS and on HUD's website, but just make sure your lender that you're working with that buyer understands how that works. If you need a lender that understands it, let me know. I'd be glad to send you over to a couple. But just make sure you're not working with a lender who's trying to figure it out on the fly, because they'll kill the deal for you. Okay, so on these insured properties, the initial bid period is 10 days, which means HUD's going to take offers for 10 days. Doesn't matter if you submit it on day 1 or day 10. They're going to take all the bids in during those 10 days. They're sealed, nobody looks at them. On the 11th day, they'll open the bids up. Whoever has the highest net to HUD is going to get the deal. And after those 10 days, if for some reason, which never happens anymore, if they didn't accept something within those first 10 days, then they review them on a daily basis. So if you submit your bid on day 12, you'll have a response on day 13, which is really nice. But again, it doesn't happen too often. Only time that really does happen is if they fall out of escrow, they come back on the market, then they're on a daily bid review basis. And on any of the insured ones, the owner occupancy period is 30 days on those. And then the next type's the uninsured. There's going to be 2 different types for this. If it's straight up uninsured, the only thing you can do on those is cash or conventional, probably a conventional rehab loan. I know Wells has one. I don't know if anybody else has a conventional rehab loan. These are going to be ones that are either jacked up beyond recognition, fire damage, crazy amount of rehab, or they're in flood zones because FHA won't do loans in flood zones. The other type is uninsured that are 203K eligible. So these are going to be the ones that are jacked up more than $5,000 in rehab needed, but they can still do a 203K loan only. So anything uninsured, you're not doing 203B. If it's uninsured 203K eligible, then you could do a 203K, but not 203B. I know it's kind of confusing. It'll make more sense when I show you how they display it on here. For these, they're going to do a lottery period for 7 days. They're going to offer it up to nonprofits and government agencies. I've never seen one bought by a nonprofit or government agency, so they're going to show up on HUD's website for 7 days, and once none of them buy the property, then it goes to a 5-day initial bid period, and that is owner occupants only. So the owner occupancy period and the initial bid period are the same on these uninsured ones. So first 5 days, owner occupants only. After the first 5, it's wide open, so investors can come in. They understand the odds of selling one of these uninsured properties to an owner occupant is pretty slim, so they want to get through that period as fast as they can. When you're looking at search results on the HUD Home Store website, the listing period, if it's exclusive, it's available to owner occupants only. If it's extended, it's available to owner occupants and investors. So just a quick thing. So if you ever want to search and see if there's anything that is available for investors, just click at the top under listing period and it'll sort them out, extended and exclusive. It's super rare anything makes it to investor periods right now. They're getting swooped up, during that initial bid period, probably 95% of the time. So HUD homes don't, if you have investors, every once in a while you might see one make it to that extended period, but it's pretty rare. These are really geared towards your owner occupant buyers. The other thing on here is the bid open date. This is going to be the date that they'll actually open the bids, which means you need to have your bid in the day before by 10 p.m. Our time, or 9:59 technically. So those are just 2 key things to focus on here. It'll show over here if there was a price reduction, if it's a new listing, whatever the status may be. Once you open up a particular property, up at the top it's going to tell you who it's available for, owner occupants, investors, nonprofits, good neighbor next door. It's going to basically tell you all that information up top, and it's going to tell you when's the deadline, when you need to have the bids submitted, and just in case you can't figure out that's how many days, how many minutes, and how many seconds, it'll tell you that too.
Has to be wet signature, yes?
No, there's no signatures at all. We'll get into that in a minute. So again, it goes over what the period deadline is, or I'm sorry, the top is the bid submission deadline. The period deadline is when it's going to switch from exclusive to extended, when it's going to go from owner occupant only to open up to investors. Again, it's super rare that it ever makes it over to it. But so up top, you can see when you need to have your bid in by. Down here, you can see when it'll be available to investors. It'll show you on here as-is price and list price. Typically, these are going to be the same number. The as-is value is the appraised value. The list price is the list price. If they make it somehow 30 days on market, they will do a price reduction on it, typically. Sometimes you'll see one that's fallen out of escrow and they'll reduce the price when they put it back on the market, but again, it's pretty rare. Most buyers are hanging in on these things, you know, like it's the last thing on earth. And then down below here, it's going to show you the financing type. So it's going to tell you, like we talked about, if it's insured or uninsured, and if it's 203K eligible, or if there's a repair escrow. It's going to clarify all that right here under FHA financing. This particular one is an insured one with escrow, so it's going to tell you what the amount of that repair escrow is. So this particular home needs $1,900 in repairs in order to qualify for FHA financing. I think it has no flooring. But a buyer could buy this with an FHA loan. If it wasn't a HUD home, there's no way you're doing that. Although some lenders' holdbacks are starting to become more popular, lenders are starting to get more flexible with stuff. But HUD homes, it's set in stone. You don't have to worry about, you know, whether or not the seller will allow it or not. So you can always look on here, and the same information should be on the MLS. There's 2 asset management companies for HUD homes, BLB Resources and PEMCO. They have slightly different policies on what information they display on the MLS. I work for BLB. With BLB, we have to have that information right there on the MLS so it's clear. But to be honest with you, HUD Home Store is more accurate than the MLS because this is run by HUD. What'll happen is HUD will update their website before they tell the asset management company. So then the asset management company finds out, then they have to tell us. So there's a lag before we get information a lot of times. So we actually check here. If we have a new listing we know should be coming up soon, we'll know it's on here before our asset management company tells us it's available, before it's available. So the HUD Home Store website's a better resource than the MLS for any information on HUD Homes. So definitely just recommend, again, you guys subscribe to anything in San Diego County, and it'll just email you once a day letting you know what listings there are. But this is definitely more accurate than the MLS. Other stuff, the second tab on HUD Home Store is the addendums. The disclosures one is what BLB calls it. Sometimes PEMCO calls it something different. They might call it disclosures and repairs. That'll outline what repairs are needed on the property. So if it's one of those that has a repair escrow, it'll tell you what the repairs are and what amount they estimated for those repairs. Another thing on here, they try to really make this stuff dummy proof so you don't screw up the contract, so they give you like how to complete a perfect contract and all kinds of fun stuff. The other thing on here is a PCR. HUD does a half-ass inspection on the property before they list them, and they do a property condition report. They do a very basic test of the plumbing, the electrical, the appliances, and the roof. I would not rely on it much at all, but at least they do something so you can have some sort of an idea of what the condition of the mechanics are of the home before you go show it, but it's half-assed, to be honest with you, so you can rely on it as much as you want to. A lot of them don't have electricity, so they'll be like, tested electricity not on, and that'll be your whole inspection for that. So buyer definitely still should get their own home inspection and rely upon that much more than what HUD does. If you ever need to find out information on the home, there's 3. If you click the agent info, it's going to tell you who's the field service manager. These guys are the ones that are responsible for making sure the property's secure and safe. If you go in a house and there's a squatter or something in there, you could call us or you can call the field service company and let them know. If we ever piss you guys off or something and you want to, rat us out to our asset manager, their info's right there, and then the listing agent info is going to be down here at the bottom. So hopefully you guys can just call these guys and say, Kyle did a great class today, thank you. That would be awesome. Shoot them an email or something. So once you guys find a HUD home, you want to write an offer on it. There's no paperwork that's required up front. Everything is done via an electronic bid submission. It takes about 5 seconds to submit a bid. It's super, super easy. So when you're on HUD Home Store, you'll just click down here at the bottom, submit an offer or submit a bid, same difference. All it's going to ask you is what price, what type of financing, any credits, how much commission you want to take, It's going to ask, do you want the offer held as a backup? Always say yes to that. There's no reason why you would ever not want your offer held as a backup. It's going to ask if the buyer is owner, occupant, or investor, but if it's within that initial owner occupancy period, it's not even going to allow you to select investor. It's going to be grayed out like this one is. It's going to ask you for the buyer's name, social, address, phone number, and that's it. That's all there is to submitting a bid on a HUD home. You don't have to fill out any contracts up front. What will happen is once HUD decides which bid to select, you have 2 business days to get them the contract to their office, which BLB is in Irvine and PEMCO is in Sacramento. You have 2 business days. They do not cut any slack. So as soon as you get that bid acceptance, let's say you got that notice this morning, you would have until Friday at 5 p.m. to get your contract package to HUD. The contract packages are under this addendums tab. So they'll actually have the contract packages here, and the listing agent should email you a copy of the contract package as well when your offer gets selected, and try to give you all the instructions in the world of how to not screw up the contract package. Keys with the contract package: it has to be done in blue ink. It all has to be on one piece of paper. You can't have any faxes, no scans, no emails, nothing. Literally everybody has to sit down together and sign the contract in blue ink. You as the agent, Steve is, Steve your guys' broker of record?
Yes.
Okay, Steve and the buyer all have to sign the same contract in blue ink. So if you have an out-of-state buyer, it's a pain in the ass. You can make it work, you know, you can send it to your client with like a prepaid overnight envelope. They sign it, send it to you, you sign it, and then overnight it to them. And if everything works perfectly, you get it in with 2 days. So some people kind of prefer to do the contract up front so they don't have to scramble in a 2-day period to get it done. But you do not have to upload anything to HUD. So you do not have to upload the contract. There's a little part at the bottom that says, I certify that I will send a signed copy of the contract within 2 days of bid acceptance, and that's all they ask for. So they're not asking for you to upload it. You don't have to upload a pre-approval, no EMD, none of that stuff. You just type in these like 7 or 8 fields and you're done. And that's all there is to submit it. But just be prepared that if the bid open date is tomorrow, make sure you and your client have a tentative appointment set for tomorrow to fill out that contract so that you make sure you get it in time. Once you submit the bid, HUD will only notify the winning bidder. They won't tell anybody else. So no news is bad news with a HUD home. So if today was the bid open date, if I didn't hear anything by noon, odds are I didn't get the property. They'll typically notify you early in the morning by 10 o'clock. But if you want to check the status, you can go up top to bidder functions, and you can